Hello, and welcome to Knowledge Nap. You have found your way here to this quiet space, this calm drifting time away from the noise of the day. You can set down all the thoughts and worries and lists. They are not needed here. Here, all that is required is that you rest, that you find a comfortable position in your bed, that you feel the support of the pillow and the weight of the blanket, and that you simply breathe, taking a slow, deep breath in, filling your lungs with the calm air, and letting it all go, feeling the tension leave your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, feeling your arms and legs grow heavy and soft. This is a place for quiet stories, stories to help you drift and to dream, stories about the deep mysteries and the hidden wonders of our world. Our story tonight is about the sky, about the deep, silent, velvet darkness above us. If you look out on a clear night far from the glowing lights of the city, you can see them, thousands and thousands of tiny, shimmering points of light, the stars, and between those stars is just emptiness, a vast, cold and quiet expanse, a silence that stretches for distances we cannot truly imagine. The universe, it seems, is mostly silent. We have spent our entire history as a species lying on our backs, looking up at that silence and wondering if we are truly as alone as we feel. We have listened to that silence with our hearts and our myths and our philosophies. And in the last century, in the blink of an eye in cosmic time, we have learned to listen in a new way, not with our ears, but with giant metal structures, with sensitive radios and powerful computers. We have built ears to listen to the static of the cosmos, to tune in to the faint ancient hiss of the background of space, hoping to find in all that noise, in that ocean of static, a single clear note, a pattern, a message, a whisper from somewhere else, a sign that someone or something is out there, looking back at us and wondering the same thing. Our story tonight is about one of those whispers, the loudest, clearest, and most mysterious whisper we have ever heard. A sound that lasted for only 72 seconds and was then gone. A sound that has puzzled and haunted us for decades. It is the story of the wow signal. Our journey begins not in the stars, but on the earth, in a quiet field in the American Midwest. The year is 1977. Let's just rest here for a moment. In 1977, it feels like a long time ago and yet so very recent. It is a world we can almost touch, a world of analog machines and printed paper, a world where music was played on vinyl records or the soft hiss and pop before the song begins, a world where news was read on paper, the smell of the ink and the crinkle of the pages. There is no internet, there are no smartphones, there is no constant stream of digital information filling every quiet moment. It was perhaps a quieter world, a world with more room for patience. And in this quiet, analog world, in a grassy field in the state of Ohio, there was an ear. It was a part of the Perkins Observatory at Ohio Wesleyan University, but it was known to everyone by its simple, friendly nickname, the Big Ear. When you think of a radio telescope, you probably imagine a giant, gleaming white dish, a sleek, modern bowl that can pivot and turn to look at any part of the sky. The Big Ear was not like that. It was a strange and wonderful and beautifully simple thing. Imagine a field, a flat green field stretching the length of 3 entire football fields, and in that field stood 2 giant silver-gray structures. They were not dishes at all. One was a massive, flat wall tilted up at an angle, like a giant billboard waiting for a message. The other, standing some distance away, was a huge curved reflector, shaped like a part of a giant invisible sphere. And these two giant structures were not made of solid metal. They were covered in a simple, strong metal mesh. It looked almost like chicken wire, a giant fence built to catch the faintest whispers from the stars. It looked like a piece of construction, a piece of strange architecture more than a telescope. It was not sleek. It was not elegant. It was functional. It was enormous. It was built with a special kind of genius, a genius for patience, because the big ear did not move. It could not swivel or turn or track a star as it moved across the sky. It was fixed, rooted in the earth. It stared straight up at one narrow strip of the heavens, and it simply waited. It waited for the world itself to turn. It let the slow, steady, graceful rotation of the earth do all the work. It let the planet gently and precisely drag the night sky across its field of view. It was an instrument built on the very idea of patience. It listened to one narrow slice of the sky at a time, day after day, night after night, year after year. It sat in that vast green field, listening to the silent sounds of the Ohio summer, the wind as it rustled through the tall grass at its feet, the gentle hum of insects in the trees at the edge of the field, the distant rumble of a truck on a faraway highway, and it listened to the sky. It listened to the hiss of distant ancient stars. It listened to the faint radio static from the heart of our own Milky Way galaxy. It listened to the quiet, constant background hum of the universe itself, and it translated all of this cosmic sound, into a simple code. In a small, windowless shed nearby, a machine waited. It was not a supercomputer. It was not a bank of glowing screens. It was a teletype machine, a rugged mechanical printer that was built to be a workhorse. Second by second, the big ear would gather the radio light, funneling it down into its sensitive receivers. Its electronic heart would measure the intensity of whatever it was hearing, and it would send a signal down a wire to the shed, and the teletype machine would come to life with a sudden clack, clack, clack. It punched letters and numbers onto a long, folding river of pale green and white striped paper, the kind of paper with holes on the edges to feed it through the machine. This paper was the voice of the cosmos. This continuous, folding stream was the diary of the big ear. Most of the time, that voice was just a whisper. The printer would type a 1 or a 2 over and over and over, column after column, page after page. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. This was the background noise, the normal, quiet, baseline static of an empty universe. It was the sound of nothing. And for the scientists who ran the big ear, nothing was what they found almost all of the time. And now we come to the man. His name was Dr. Jerry Amon. He was an astronomer, a professor. But at the big ear, he was a volunteer. He gave his time for free to this patient, quiet search. Because he too was a person who knew how to listen. He believed that the search was worth the effort, even if they found nothing at all. His job was not glamorous. He was not the one who stood in the field at night staring at the stars. His job was to read the paper. On a warm day in the middle of August, 1977, August 18th, Jerry Amon went to the observatory. He collected the printouts from the teletype machine, the long folded stack of paper that held the record of the past few days of the telescope's listening. He took the thick stack of paper back to his desk. Perhaps it was in his office. Perhaps it was in a quiet room at home. We can see him there, sitting under a simple desk lamp, the stack of pale green paper on one side, a red pen in his hand, His task was to scan, to look for anything unusual. He was not expecting to find anything. This was a routine he had done many times before. His eyes scanned the long columns of numbers and letters. But first, he had to know the code. It was a simple code. The machine measured the signal's strength. If the signal was 0 or 1 or 2, it printed a 1 or 2. This was just noise, the background. If the signal got stronger from 3 to 9, the machine would print 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Anything 5 or higher was interesting. It was a blip, a little spike of energy. But what if the signal was stronger than 9? The machine was programmed to switch to the alphabet. A 10 was printed as an A, an 11 was a B, a 12 was a C, all the way up to Z. A Z would be an incredibly powerful signal, a roar of energy from the sky. But Jerry Amon was not looking for a Z. He was just scanning. His eyes moved down the page, column after column, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. The familiar, sleepy static of the Milky Way. He scanned for minutes, maybe hours, page after page of the same, the steady, reassuring nothingness, the quiet breathing of the universe. And then he saw it. His eyes stopped. Halfway down a column, the numbers changed. It was not a 1 or a 2. He leaned in closer. There, printed in the blocky, mechanical type of the teletype machine, was a sequence. It did not belong. It read 6. In the entry right below it, E, in the next one, Q, in the next one, U, in the next, J, in the next, 5. And then, right after the 5, the column returned to 1. 1, 2, 1, static. Jerry Amon stared at the sequence. 6 letters and numbers. 6, E, Q, U, J, 5. He knew what this meant. He knew the code. A 6 meant the signal was 6 times stronger than the background noise. An E meant it was 14 times stronger. A Q meant it was 26 times stronger. And U was the highest measurement the system could record. That was not just an overload. U meant the signal was 30 times stronger than the background hiss of the universe. It was not a whisper. It was a shout. It was a roar. A sudden, stunning, powerful blast of energy from a silent part of the sky. It was the loudest, clearest signal the big ear had ever recorded. And it was not just noise. It was not a simple blip. It had a shape, a structure. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It started strong at 6. It climbed to E. It rocketed to Q. It peaked at U. And then, just as smoothly, it faded, down to J, down to 5. And then it was gone, vanished, back into the static. Jerry Amon sat at his desk, the paper in his hand. He felt a shiver, a kind of electric shock of pure wonder. His heart was likely pounding in his chest. This was impossible. This was exactly what they were looking for. He picked up his red pen. With a slightly unsteady hand, he drew a circle around the impossible sequence. 6EQJ5. He stared at it. This printout was a record from 3 nights earlier. August 15th, 1977, at 10:16 in the evening. A 72-second event that had come and gone silently, unseen, unknown, until this very moment. He needed to mark this. He needed to write something to tell the others, to tell himself that this was real. And in the margin of the paper next to the red circle, he wrote a single human word. A word of disbelief and astonishment and pure, unfiltered awe. He wrote, "Wow!" And that one word, that simple human reaction would echo for the next 50 years. It would give a name to the single greatest mystery in our long, patient search for an answer to the quiet of the night sky. That single, red-penned word, "wow," was just the beginning. It was the human reaction, the gasp of surprise and wonder. But after the gasp came the questions. the quiet, intense, scientific questions. Jerry Eman and his colleagues did not just see a strange word on a page. They were scientists. They saw a puzzle, a profound and beautiful puzzle. They needed to understand not just that it had happened, but what had happened. What exactly had the big ear listened to for those 72 seconds on that quiet August night? They began to take the signal apart, piece by piece, to study its anatomy. And the deeper they looked, the more mysterious and the more perfect it became. Let's just rest on that word perfect, because in the search for extraterrestrial, intelligent scientists had not just been listening, they had been thinking. For decades, they had asked themselves, if we were to get a message from another civilization, what would it look like? How would they send it so that we would know it was not just noise? They had created a list, a set of predictions, a kind of fingerprint that an intelligent signal would leave. And the wow signal matched this fingerprint perfectly. Let us together slowly look at the clues. The first clue was the duration. 72 seconds. This number is the first key to the entire mystery. 72 seconds. It might seem like a random amount of time, but to the astronomers at the Big Ear, it was the most important number of all. Remember how the telescope worked. It was fixed. It did not move. It simply stared at one patch of the sky and waited for the Earth to turn. The astronomers had done the math. They knew that any object fixed in deep space, like a distant star or a faraway galaxy or a beacon from another world, would take exactly 72 seconds to drift through the telescope's narrow field of view. If a signal was from Earth, like a car's ignition or a military broadcast, it would be random. It might last a second or a minute. It would not have a clean beginning, middle, and end. If it was a satellite orbiting the Earth, it would move much faster or much slower, and its signal would sound different. But this signal, this 6EQUJ5, was a perfect bell curve. It started relatively strong at 6 as it first entered the telescope's view. It grew stronger and stronger, EQ, as it moved toward the center of the beam. It peaked at the incredible strength of U as it passed through the most sensitive central part of the Big Ear, and then it faded just as smoothly. J. 5, and then it was gone. 1. Static. It rose, and it fell in perfect, beautiful symmetry over exactly 72 seconds. It behaved in the exact way that a tiny, distant, fixed point of light or sound from the deep, deep cosmos was supposed to behave. It was not from Earth. It was not from our solar system. It came from the deep. This was the first perfect click, the first piece that slotted into the puzzle. But it was the next piece that made the scientists truly hold their breath. The second clue was the frequency, the channel that the signal was on. When you turn the radio dial in your car, you're moving between frequencies. Each station broadcasts at its own specific number. The universe is also full of broadcasts. Stars, comets, gas clouds. They all broadcast radio energy at different frequencies. Most of it is a jumble of noise, a cosmic static. But there is one frequency that is special, one frequency that is more important than all the others. It is 1420 megahertz, 1420 megahertz. It is known to scientists as the hydrogen line. Let's just rest with that idea. The hydrogen line. Why is it so special? Because hydrogen is the most common, the most simple, the most fundamental element in the entire universe. It was the first element created in the Big Bang. It is the building block of everything. It is in the stars. It is in the vast cold clouds of gas between the stars. It is in the water we drink. It is in us. And this element hydrogen, when it is cold and floating in space, it sings a very quiet, very specific, very faint radio song. It whispers at 1420 megahertz, always. It is a fundamental, unchanging constant of our universe. Astronomers know this. They use this hydrogen song to map the invisible arms of our own galaxy. They listen for that 1420 megahertz whisper to see where the clouds of gas are hiding. And decades ago, in the 1950s, two scientists named Cocconi and Morrison wrote a paper. They asked that same question. If an alien civilization wanted to send a message, what channel would they use? They knew it would have to be a channel that any intelligent species would think to listen to, a universal meeting place. And they realized the answer was the hydrogen line, 1420 megahertz. Because any civilization that builds a radio telescope will eventually discover the song of hydrogen. They will know it is the most important frequency in the cosmos. They also knew that this part of the radio spectrum is quiet. It is protected by international agreements. Humanity is not supposed to broadcast on this channel. We keep it clear, so our own astronomers can listen to the quiet song of the hydrogen. Cocconi and Morrison called this frequency the watering hole, a quiet, universal, obvious meeting place in the vastness of the radio dial, where two different civilizations might one day find each other. And the wow signal, the loudest, clearest signal the big ear had ever heard, was not near the hydrogen line. It was not close to 1420 megahertz. It was exactly on it, precisely, perfectly. The telescope had two receivers listening at the same time. One was listening right on the hydrogen line. The other was listening on a nearby frequency just as a control. The control receiver heard nothing, just static. One. But the main receiver, the one tuned to the cosmic watering hole, heard a roar. This was the second perfect click, a signal from deep space, at the exact predicted alien frequency. The chances of this happening by accident were so small they were almost zero. A natural, occurring cosmic event like a pulsar or a black hole broadcasts over a wide range of frequencies. It's noisy. It's like a messy splash. But the wow signal was a narrow-band signal. It was a pure tone, like a single clear note from a flute in the middle of a hurricane. Natural events do not do this. Human-made technology does. A radio station is a narrow-band signal, a pure tone, so here is what they had. A signal that was not from Earth. A signal that lasted for exactly the right amount of time. A signal that was on the exact perfect watering hole frequency. And a signal that had the clean, narrow, pure tone fingerprint of technology. It was a key that fit every single lock of the puzzle they had built. There was one last clue, the source. Where in the sky did it come from? The big ear's data was clear. The signal had come from the constellation Sagittarius, near a small, dense cluster of stars called M55. This area of the sky is in the direction of the center of our own Milky Way galaxy, a place billions of years old, crowded with billions of stars, billions of potential worlds. So Jerry Eamon and the other astronomers looked at their findings. It was a technological signal. It was from deep space. It was on the one and only magic frequency. It ticked every single box. It was the very definition of what they were searching for. It was a perfect candidate. The only problem was that after those 72 seconds, it was gone. It vanished as completely as it had arrived, leaving nothing but a red circle on a piece of paper and 1,000 unanswered questions. And so the questions began, the 1,000 unanswered questions. The excitement of that first discovery, that wow moment, quickly faded, and it was replaced by a new and much more difficult feeling. The feeling of, what now? What do you do the day after you hear a potential whisper from the stars? The first thing you do is listen again, with all your might. John Krauss, the director of the observatory, and Jerry Eman and the whole team turned the big ear back to that small, empty-looking patch of sky in the constellation Sagittarius. They pointed their giant metal ear at the exact spot, and they listened. They listened with a new, tense focus. They were no longer just scanning for nothing. They were hunting for something. Something that had, for 72 seconds, shaken their understanding of the universe. They listened that night, and the next night, and the night after that. They sat in a quiet shed and they watched a teletype machine. They watched a long green and white paper spool out onto the floor. Clack, 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 and the paper read 1, 1, 2. 1, static. The familiar, sleepy hiss of the cosmos had returned. The shout was gone. The library was silent once more. They kept listening for weeks, for months. The big ear returned to that patch of sky over 100 times. In the years that followed, other, more powerful telescopes were built. Sleek, advanced dishes that were thousands of times more sensitive than the old mesh big ear. Scientists from all over the world pointed these new, powerful ears at that same patch of sky. They listened, and they heard nothing, just the silence. The signal has never, ever returned. It was a single 72-second event in all of human history, a cosmic lightning strike, a sound that came and went so quickly that we were left wondering if we had heard it at all. But we had the proof, we had the printout, that piece of pale green paper with a red circle, that wow. And so the mystery only deepened. It moved from a search to a puzzle. If we cannot hear it again, can we at least explain it? And so the theories began. The decades of what if. These theories are stories we tell to try and make sense of the impossible. Let us relax and drift together through these possibilities, these branching paths of imagination and logic. The first theory is the one that still makes the hair on our arms stand up, the one that Jerry Eman felt in his heart in that first moment. The romantic theory. What if it was them? What if the signal was exactly what it looked like? A beacon, a message, a hello from across the void. What if somewhere in the deep, ancient heart of the galaxy in the direction of Sagittarius there is a civilization, a species that has also looked up at the silence and wondered if they were alone? And what if they decided to do something about it, to send a signal? Not just a whisper, but a shout, a beacon so powerful it could cross the ocean of interstellar space. And they would be smart. They would know to send it at the watering hole, at 1420 megahertz. They would know that any other listening species would be listening there. Perhaps it is a lighthouse. Imagine a powerful beacon on a distant planet spinning slowly around, sweeping the galaxy with a focused beam of radio light. A powerful we are here, we are here, we in are here. And perhaps for 72 brief, shining seconds that lighthouse beam swept across our tiny, blue planet. The big ear was in just the right place, at just the right second to catch it, a moment of pure cosmic chance. And then the beam moved on, leaving us in the dark once more, wondering if we saw what we thought we saw. This theory would explain why we never heard it again. The lighthouse beam is still spinning, but it is pointing elsewhere now, or perhaps it was a call, a one-time powerful broadcast sent out in all directions, a single expensive shout. Is anyone out there? And now they are just like us, listening to the silence, waiting for a reply. This theory is beautiful. It's full of wonder. It validates that feeling that Jerry Eman had. That, wow, it is the theory we want to be true. But in science, the most beautiful theory is not always the right one. And the silence that followed is the biggest argument against it. If it was a message, why was it only sent once? Why have we never heard it again? The silence is the problem. And so scientists must search for other explanations, mundane explanations, theories that do not require alien life. And for 40 years, the mystery remained unsolved, a perfect riddle with no answer, until 2017, 40 years after the signal. A new theory emerged, one that seemed to solve it all, the comet theory. An astronomer named Antonio Paris proposed a new idea. He asked what else was in that patch of sky that night that no one knew about. He checked the modern star charts, the records of our solar system, and he found something that everyone in 1977 had missed, because they could not have known. He found that on August 15th, 1977, 2 comets were passing through that exact patch of sky. Their names were 266P, Christensen, and 335P, Gibbs. No one knew they existed in 1977. They were discovered much, much later. And comets are not just rocks. They're giant, dirty snowballs. They're made of ice and dust and frozen gas left over from the birth of the solar system. And as they get closer to the sun in their long, slow orbits, they heat up. And they release a massive cloud of gas, a huge glowing atmosphere called a coma. And what is a major component of that gas? Hydrogen. Comets are surrounded by vast, vast clouds of hydrogen gas. So the theory is this: the big ear was not looking at an alien beacon from deep space. It was looking at one of these comets inside our own solar system. As the comet and its massive hydrogen cloud drifted through the 72-second beam, it produced a strong signal, a signal right near the hydrogen line. It was a natural phenomenon, not an alien one. This theory felt neat, it felt tidy. It seemed to solve the mystery. The media reported it as the final answer. The case was closed. But was it? The original astronomers from the Big Ear Project, those who were still around, did not think so. They came forward and pointed out the flaws in the comet theory. First, they said, a comet's hydrogen cloud is huge and fluffy and diffuse. It is not a tiny pinpoint source. It would not produce a signal that rose and fell so perfectly in 72 seconds. It would be a messier signal, longer, more spread out. Second, the signal was so strong that 30 times stronger than the background. It is very unlikely a comet's faint cloud would be that loud. And third, the big ear had 2 receiver horns listening side by side. The signal was heard by one, but not the other. This meant it was a pinpoint. A diffuse cloud, like a comet's coma, is so large it should have been heard by both. So the comet theory, while clever, does not quite fit the data. The wow signal was too neat, too perfect, too focused. The puzzle remained, which leaves us with other theories. The interstellar scintillation theory. This is the lucky shot theory. Scintillation is just a fancy word for twinkling. When you see a star twinkle in the night sky, you are seeing its light get bent and distorted by our own Earth's atmosphere. The same thing can happen with radio waves in deep space. Perhaps there is a weak, distant signal from that spot, a pulsar or something else. A signal so weak we can't normally hear it, just static. And perhaps for 72 seconds, a cosmic lens, a cloud of gas or a star's gravity passed in between us and the signal, and it magnified it enormously, like a cosmic magnifying glass. It made the signal twinkle brightly for a moment before fading away. This is plausible. It would explain why we never heard it again. It was a 1 in a billion chance alignment, but it does not explain the perfect frequency. And then there is the last theory, the most boring one, the one that scientists hate but must always consider, the glitch, the mundane explanation. Perhaps it was just a mistake, a signal from Earth, a secret military broadcast that was not on the books, a signal that bounced off a piece of space debris, a lost wrench from an Apollo mission, and it just happened to look perfect. It just happened to last 72 seconds. It just happened to be on the hydrogen line. It is a coincidence so vast and so perfect that it seems almost as unlikely as the alien theory itself. And so we are left where we began, in the quiet, with the mystery. The theories circle each other like planets around a hidden sun. None of them are perfect. None of them can be proven. And the one thing that could solve it all, the big ear itself, is gone now. That is the final part of our story, the legacy of that night. The big ear was a child of the 1960s and 70s. By the 1980s and 90s, it was old. It was out of date. Newer, better telescopes had been built. The funding for the project began to dry up. In the 1990s, the land it sat on was sold to a developer. In 1998, the giant patient telescope was dismantled. The giant mesh reflectors were torn down. The metal was sold for scrap. The small shed with the teletype machine was bulldozed. Today, that grassy field in Ohio that listens so intently to the cosmos is a golf course, where a giant metal ear once listened for the whispers of an alien world. There is now only the gentle thwack of a golf ball and the quiet murmur of conversation about scores and handicaps. It is a strange, poetic, and somewhat sad ending for the telescope. The telescope is gone, but the printout remains, that long sheet of pale green paper, that red circle, that one word. Wow! It is preserved at the Ohio History Connection, a relic, a sacred text from an unknown scripture. It is the single greatest unsolved riddle in our long search for life. It is a 72-second question that has echoed through our culture for half a century. We still do not know what the big ear heard that night. We may never know. And perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the story is not about the answer. It is about the question. It's about the profound and beautiful feeling of wonder. That feeling that Jerry Eman had when he picked up his red pen. The wow signal is a reminder that the universe is vast and strange, and far more mysterious than we can possibly imagine. It is a reminder that we live on a tiny, fragile world, drifting in a silent cosmic ocean, and that it is a wonderful and noble thing to build an ear and to listen, to stare out into the great, dark quiet and wait for a sound, to hope that someday in all that static we might find a voice. And so tonight, as you lie in the comfort of your bed, you can let the mystery fade. You can let the questions and the theories dissolve into the quiet of your room. There are no riddles to solve tonight, no answers to find, only the feeling of rest, the feeling of drifting peacefully, letting the story go, letting the day go, feeling your body grow heavy and calm, drifting like a lone signal through the quiet expanse of space, drifting into the calm, into the deep and restful silence, drifting to sleep. Good night.